Well, let me introduce myself first. My name is Aylin Öney Tan. I'm a self-appointed food researcher, original an architect, specialized in conservation of historic monuments. So it was a twist of fate that I changed careers and became a food writer and researcher. I write for Cumhuriyet newspaper and also to Hürriyet Daily News on Mondays. I have a column called Fork and Cork. Well, I'll tell you how I got interested in this subject. As I said, I'm a self-appointed researcher, so I attend to Oxford Food Symposium every year since I think it was 2007 I first attended. And every year they pick a wonderful topic. And I try to present something related to Turkey or this region or this geography of the world related with the theme. So when it was announced, so this presentation is based, now that we are going to have, is my original presentation at the first food symposium that I did jointly with Fuchsia Dunlop. So I'll tell you the story how we ended up with this subject. So in the year 2012, the theme was announced as wrapped and stuffed. So at the instant that the theme was announced, I knew that I was going to do something related to dumplings or Mantı. And I was great friends with Fuchsia Dunlop, who is an expert on Chinese cookery. Actually, she has studied in China, in Chengdu, in a cooking school, so she knows Chinese, she understands Chinese, she speaks Chinese, she writes Chinese, she takes notes in Chinese, she reads Chinese, so she's an expert. So we always had in mind to do something between China and Turkey, because when we were talking, we were always finding links, and she has also studied in the Uyghur area, and she has come to Anatolia. So we were always talking about the similarities. So when the theme was announced, I started to, push Fuchsia to make a joint paper. Of course, to co-author a paper or to make a joint paper is to start with a disaster. Yeah, you never end up with the things that you have expected. So the theme was that. And so we ended up doing the paper, but we decided that I would cover the Central Asia westwards to Anatolia, and Fuchsia would cover from Central Asia to the east, covering China and other Asian countries. We didn't want to go to Central Europe or further in Europe, so we wanted to stick to Asia and Anatolia. That was the initial idea. Here you see about our presentation at Oxford. I'm trying to explain what we are going to do. And on the center with the glasses is Fuchsia Dunlop, and our chair is Helen Saberi, who is specialized in Afghani cooking. And the blonde lady looking up, very interesting, she's Sharon Hudgins. She's specialized in especially Siberian and Russian cooking, and she has lived in Siberia for so long, and she was going to present on Panini. So the missing person here was Carolyn Rowe from, she's British, but she's from India. She was going to present the Tibetan momo. So we were so confident. We were covering the whole continent, from Russia to Tibet, and Fuchsia expert, the ultimate expert in Chinese cooking, and I know about, and we were so naive because we could only have a glimpse of what is about all the dumplings in this Asian continent. So I'll explain you about our approach, how we tackled the issue. So as I said, we always had this feeling that northern China and Anatolia have so many things in common, and of course the Central Asian countries. So when we started in our research, we also wanted to go to the historical sources and try to find about the meaning of Mantou. Well, Mantı in Turkish doesn't really have a meaning. In Chinese also they say that it comes from the barbarian, it means barbarian head or something, but this is again an interpretation, it's not certain. So it doesn't really have a Chinese meaning too. We wanted to go through the historical sources, which is very difficult both in China and in Turkey. And so that was, well, I'll explain you. We started with the same source with fuchsia, but ended up finding completely different things. So, according to this is fuchsia, looking very serious with the glasses. I'm trying to think what Mantı means. So, that was the discussion we were having in the symposium. So, as fuchsia says, it means originally barbarian head. So it was because of the Turks that the Chinese gave the name Mantou. But now Mantou is something else in northern China. It's more like not our Mantou, but it's like a steamed bread or a bun. Sometimes with no filling at all, so it ended up being something else. But I'm not going to go to fuchsia's details, so I'll more stick to the Turkish side. So for us, mantı is a dish. So it's boiled, sometimes fried, sometimes steamed, but it's a boiled dumpling with sauce, yogurt, or sometimes only butter, but it's a dish that you can eat with a spoon, not with your hand, and so it's a whole incorporated dish. Whereas the Asian dumplings we'll see, or mantus, are more like a snack that you can have by hand, so they're individual. So on the way, apparently, mantı ended up being a completely dish on its own, whereas in Asian countries it is still like a snack. So, well, I'll first go through the historical sources that we have found. The earliest source that I could find related to mantı was a recipe of tutmaç. So we in Turkey say that the ancestor of mantı is tutmaç, which is, well, very early noodle dish made by the Turks. And the earliest recording of tutmaç is in Divan Lugat al-Turk, which is the first Turkish dictionary ever written by the Turkic scholar Mahmud al-Kashgari. So the year is 11th century, and the tutmaç here is cut noodles, boiled with a yogurt sauce incorporated, very much like the tutmaç we have today. So there's no filling, but there's also some minced meat in the dish. So it's like an open mantı or a deconstructed mantı or something like that. But another colleague, Charles Perry, who has done extensive research on early Turkish sources and Arabic sources and medieval Arabic cooking, noted that there is also a gadget or a tool, utensil, called minzam tutmaç in the same dictionary, which means a tool for arranging the tutmaç. And they kind of tried to interpret it as chopsticks. But Charles Perry's interpretation is for drying the noodles. But then if you think about it, it's not a long noodle. The tutmaç is always cut in little squares or triangles, but it's tiny. So the only thing is, well, you cannot really try to dry the noodle over it, but if you have several pieces, like a mat or something, then you can dry the pieces of noodles on the... so this is a debate that's still going on. We really don't know what a minzam tutmaç means. But this is the first mention in a written source. So The second written source that we could find, and of course Fuchsia went through this, it was the, we went into the same source. So it was the book known as Yinshan Chen Yao. It's a Chinese source, meaning proper and essential things for the emperor's food and drink. And it is translated into English as with the name A Soup for the Khan. So it's one of the earliest Chinese sources on Chinese cooking, but it can be argued that it is about Chinese. It's actually a medical source, so it's medical recipes, but the recipes end up being food recipes or drink recipes, written for the Chinese emperor by his doctor, which is a Turkic origin Uyghur doctor. So the doctor for the emperor is of Turkish origin. So in this text, which dates back to 14th century, 1330, there are recipes with the name Mantı or resembling Mantı. So it's very interesting, but we have to understand the geography of the time then. So Asia, well, with Kublai Khan conquering China by 1276, all Asia became a single land or country. There was no people could travel, so it was the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol invasion, practically made the whole Asia like a single country. People could travel, people could trade, people could exchange and trade, and so I think it was the first ever period that really a cultural interaction began between the nations, the tribes, the people. So what I found in the book Soup for the Khan is 3 recipes that we can relate with the contemporary Mantou we have. One is what I believe is tutmaç, but it is translated, well, of course I could only go to the English translation, and we actually contacted the translators from the original text, so they provided us with the correct information. So one dish was tutmaç. So tutmaç is like a tutmaç, but it was interesting that it was stuffed with kuruk kıyma, which I all of a sudden realized that it is kuru kıyma, which is dried mincemeat in Turkish. And if we go to Anatolia today, we go to little villages, for example, just off Ankara, a little village, makes it still kuru kıyma, which is the place is Kalecik, where the famous Kalecik Karası wine comes from. They still make kuru kıyma for like a potted mincemeat, like a kavurma, like the potted beef, every year, and they use it like sucuk or sausages or whatever. So it's a method of preserving meat as a winter provision. So kuru kıyma apparently existed in 14th century China by the influence of the Uyghurs. And in Central Asia, people still make their kuru kıyma, potted mincemeat, as I said, as a winter provision. So it was the flavors were adjusted evenly with onions, and there was a suggestion to add garlic and cream. But I think that the cream here was lost in translation. It could be yogurt, or it could be like curd, or it could be like smetana, a sour cream. And so in some Asian countries, they don't really necessarily call yogurt yogurt, but with other names, but it's exactly the yogurt we have. The only difference is there's also finely ground basil. I think many Turkish recipes also use reyhan, which is purple basil. So basil is not totally, it's very much used in original Turkish cooking. So this tutum ash is, I think, the earliest mention of a mantı recipe as we have today. But then there was two other recipes, cut flowers mantı, which Fuchsia was very much interested in that, because she thought that it was very much related to some Chinese dumplings. They have, making folded patterns or, pleated folding or, shaping with cutting with scissors and so on. That didn't mean much to me, and the flavors were also a bit not usual for the Turkish taste palette, like mandarin orange peel and some spices. So I think here the tutmaç was very similar to mantı we have, but it was not named as mantı. But mantı was described in the cut flowers. Mantı was some different kind of dumpling, but called mantı. But the third recipe that I came across was very interesting. It was an eggplant mantı. So it was like a steamed karnıyarık, which is split belly eggplant dish. So it was practically describing something without a dough, but with a mincemeat filling, but it was steamed. So it was quite bizarre. But there was also garlic and cream, which I interpret as yogurt. So that was the sources that we could find. But we'll come for the more interesting parts. But I'll go very quickly through the history as just to give you a brief information. The only other source we can find written source about mantı is during the Fatih the Conqueror era. Every day we know that he was served in the palace a dish of mantı, but it was more like tutmaç. It was not filled, but it was like an open mantı or more soupy kind of thing. The first ever recipe in an Ottoman cookbook appears in 15th century. It is in the book of Shirvani, written by Muhammad bin Mahmud Shirvani, which is, the name is Kitab al-Tabih. But it's very interesting because it is, Shirvani is the revised edition in a way of 13th century Arabic text al-Baghdadi. But when we look at the recipes, in the original al-Baghdadi there was 174 recipes, and Shirvani added 82 recipes to the original text. And one of the recipes, a new entrance, so it was something new, it didn't appear in the Arabic text, was a recipe of mantı. So we can say that it was a very Turkic thing, and it didn't initially appear in the Arabic text, and when it was translated into, revised to be Ottoman book, mantı was added. So I won't go into detail, but from the 15th century to the 19th century, we saw no trace of written document about mantı, but it doesn't mean that it didn't exist. We have so little sources about these periods. We don't have any cookbooks and so on, so we don't come across. Well, I'm cutting this history part short because it's boring, but I told you the interesting things. So what we wanted, we didn't know how to tackle with the issue, so we kind of developed a matrix for us to compare the mantı so that we can end up in something. I don't know if we ever ended up with something. So we made a chart So we decided to put the names and then the region and then the method, the shape, the folding, and what kind of dough was used, what kind of filling was used, what was the cooking method, and how it was served. So we tried to find, to develop a matrix. So usually the Turkish mantı is a simple dough, it's not leavened, the leavening or yeast is seldom used. There are some cases though. But it's a simple dough of just flour, water, salt, and in some cases eggs. And it's usually boiled, sometimes steamed, sometimes fried, and sometimes a mix of all those techniques are incorporated. Well, I'm just showing you, if we cannot really go to each example, but to my mind, when I was doing from Central Asia westwards, I tried to gather the Turkish Anatolian dumplings in one heading, the Turkic and Central Asian dumplings in one heading, and the Caucasian and Georgian, that area, dumplings in one heading, and the Bosnian and Balkan dumplings in another heading. So here comes the photographs, and from now on it will be more interesting, I promise. So when we are talking about mantı in Turkey, we are talking about this. It's a dish with a yogurt sauce. Of course, the red sauce with paprika or crushed peppers or tomato paste is a much later addition. I could say the only it must be late 19th century or 20th century. Before that, it was a white dish. So, of course, we have lots of also readily made available mantas, little dumplings, dried or with various foldings, triangular, but usually like a bundle. And we can have them also in dried form available in the market. But we also have mantas baked. For example, this floury type comes from Çorum. The other ones also come from Çorum. So it's kind of baked in a tray with some butter, and then it's crisp, and then you serve it with yogurt, but it's never boiled or mushy. But you put water or sometimes stock, like chicken stock, but it ends up being something very dry. It's very tasty, it's to die for actually. It was from a cooking competition in Çorum. This is very interesting, this is quite rare. It's again Central Anatolia, but something like that exactly appears in a source, in an Armenian source. It was in the book written for the American school in Mersifon, Voinat Purat. A mantı recipe is given, and the description is you fold it like little cones. So this is the only contemporary example that I could find similar to this one. I'm sorry. And we have some of the dumplings in just boiled without yogurt sauce, just with a drizzling of butter and some cheese over it. These are actually from all over the places. The one with the fork is from Cyprus. It is called pirog or pirogi, and it's stuffed. Well, I don't know if we could have the authentic taste, but we'll be tasting this. It is stuffed with cheese, not with mincemeat and onion. but it's stuffed with fresh cheese and with more cheese grated on top, and of course the grated cheese is hellim. The one below, the triangular one, is from Sinop, and the other ones are called, the top one is called piruhi in some areas, or the lower one like tatar böreği. So in earlier sources we also have recipes called tatar böreği, but not mantı. So in the earlier written sources we have more recipes without the yogurt sauce, but only the butter drizzling. So we have also sometimes mantı in soups. The picture with the spoon is from Gaziantep. It is actually not a little dumpling, but a pinch of mincemeat pinched with kind of dough and then boiled into a soup with a yogurt sauce. The other ones, the one below is çuçure, which is the Uyghur mantı, so it's more like a soup. And the one on below with the spoon is Uzbek. You'll notice that there are also chickpeas boiled together. And the other one is, I think, that one has to be Mongolian. So the folding method can be very interesting. The Central Asian ones are like tortellinis, exact replicas of tortellinis. It's usually called çuçurek or çuçure or çuçure, and or it could be what we call yüksük mantı, is that one. And various methods. Sometimes, usually the mantı dough we have is rolled and then cut into squares with a filling. The square one has also some boiled rice in it. It's a very unusual filling. Or it could be cut like cookies with cutter of round shape and down folded. It's seldom in Turkey is individually rolled, but in Central Asian dumplings we see a lot of individually rolled round dumplings. So, for example, these are more Georgian and Uzbek and Caucasian dumplings. In these Caucasian and Georgian dumplings we see more intricate pleating methods, like, you know, or making it bundles. And it's interesting that, you know, they are totally closed because they are either steamed or boiled, but usually steamed. So the inside has to remain moist and not leak, but it's more like a steamed pie. Whereas in Turkey, in the bundles, we have little openings because the flavor will also leak out and flavor the broth. And these are Uzbek mantus. Especially I like the one on the far end, which is very intricate, like a spiral method. And these are the guys who made this. And the steaming pots can be like, you know, like tiffin carriers, you know, like stacked, and so you can have trays and trays and trays, and you can put more trays and steam the dumplings with very little water. And actually it's a very economical way of cooking, because with very little water you can make zillions of dumplings. So this is quite interesting because this folding method, the one below, is exactly like the dumpling we have, the mantı, but it's Mongolian and it's huge. So it's like a fist size, you know, very big. It is to be steamed, but it's very interesting that it is exactly like the a giant version of the minuscule mantı that we have. So that's why I put for comparison. The ones below are from Turkey, and the one on the top two are from Mongolia. And you'll see in a spoon that it became it was something prestigious to have dumplings very small in Turkey. So, for example, this one with the wooden spoon is from Kayseri, where like this is they have the most famous Mantı in Turkey. You have to have at least 40 little dumplings, mantus, in one spoon. So this is how it's made. So these slides I have, I gathered after I made the presentation on Oxford. This is, I made a Trans-Siberian way. So I became obsessed with this mantu or dumpling idea. So I ended up, I paid a lot for this express. And this is from Irkutsk, but it's an Uzbek dumpling maker. So it's kind of, they are quite huge, like steamed pies. And there's also always like a pie, in a pie, a steam escape on in the middle. So this, when you cut it open, the inside is quite juicy. It's just onions and mincemeat, but the mincemeat is kind of little chopped meat, not really minced, but it's hand chopped by the blade, and it's quite juicy. And they only they use salt and black pepper and sometimes cumin. So these are what I found in the railway stations. The Russian woman brings some dumplings and tried to sell it, and I was taking pictures, and they were very cross with me. So I ended up buying all, and you know, on in the train cabin we tasted them and took cross sections to understand what is in. These Siberian dumplings were not as tasty as the Uzbek ones, because the filling was more like a more hard, like a pate. But you know, the size were interesting. They were all fist-sized, and you know, they were really big, substantial snacks that you could eat like a steamed börek, I would say. But notice that their one is flavored with dill, and the other is with grated carrots. And I find very interesting the folding method of the like a basket, the central one. Okay, and these were on the border of Siberia and Mongolia. These were frozen ones in a grocery store. So it could be big ones or small ones. The small ones down there are called pelmeni. But pelmeni is usually half moon shape, but these were like little coins. So quite interesting, I find. So what we ended up doing is, finally, so we'll go through this quite briefly. With these charts, we made, I had an idea of making this identity cards in a way on the right hand side, and to try to make a mapping of the Mantı and to have a photograph. So, our editor said in the symposium, this is a brilliant book idea. I think it's really a good idea, but you know, who will make it? It's so hard. So what we could do is just to have a very, very rough picture of this vast, vast topic. So it has to be a project or something with even multidisciplinary, I would say, to really tackle with this issue. So this is what we have Mantı in Turkey. So, for example, this is from Çorum, you have seen earlier. This is an example of baked Mantı. This is Tatar böreği. This is from Eskişehir. And in Eskişehir, there's so many Crimeans and Caucasian origin people, Tatars, and this is from one of the restaurants there. This is Kayseri, the epicenter of the Mantı culture in Turkey. Again, the minuscule ones. This is Pirohi. So this is a pig from Adapazarı, which many people with Caucasian origin live, but it's also in Caucasia, of course. And this is Piroh or Pirohu from Cyprus. And this is from Sinop, Black Sea region, served with walnuts and butter only, and folded triangular. This is, again, we are going to the Caucasian territory. You can find it also in the Adapazarı region. It's halush or halushka. Now it's more closer to the Asian dumplings. This is Georgian hinkal or hingel. There are various pronunciations for that. And this is Russian pelmeni, but we also find in some regions in Turkey the same one, especially in Istanbul and Eskişehir. It's usually, in Russia it's served with sour cream or smetana. This is, again, Circassian fıdıgabın, a different kind of folding with lots of crushed red pepper. This is from Chechnya. It's called kurzunush, very similar to Georgian dumplings. It's again from Chechnya. The pleating becomes more and more intricate. It's called haltunush. Now we are coming to Azerbaijan. This is düşbere, which is like a tortellini. And you can follow the red dots going from inwards to China, to Asia now. This is chuchvara from Uzbekistan. It could be fried as a snack, boiled like a dumpling, but usually served in a soup with a rich stock and with chickpeas, usually flavored with chopped herbs. So this is a mantı, what they call mantı in Uzbekistan. And this is from Afghanistan, ashak. It's quite interesting, they also sometimes use carrots in this one. And this is Uyghur from the Xinjiang area in China. It's called çöçüre or çuçure. Notice that the folding is about the same size. The photographs may look different, but it's about the same size as this one. So they're both very much like tortellinis. It's with like a soy sauce and hot and sour sauce. This is buz, barsh or kushur from Mongolia. And this is an Uyghur mantı from Xinjiang. This is a Chinese Baozi. These are the parts that Fuchsia did. It is different because it's a leavened yeast dough this time. Quite also interesting for China, I would say, because they don't have much leavened wheaten products. And this is Chinese jiaozi. And this is what actually the Chinese call mantou now, but it's more like a steamed bun. So it's more like a bread. And it can sometimes have a sweet filling. This is the southern Chinese dumpling, especially known as the Shanghai dumpling, which has a soupy-like inside. But Fuchsia has found in her research that originally it was called Mantou, but then the name was changed eventually. So in earlier Chinese sources, this was called a Mantou. And this is the other end of Asia, Mantou, which is Korean. So it could be like pot-sticker dumplings, it could be boiled and then pan-fried or just steamed. So that was it. So we did this whole journey, and I cannot say that we could understand the topic. We just had had a very rough idea what dumplings are about, and we didn't even go to the European ones or the baked ones or whatever. The Italians is a whole other topic, of course, raviolis and tortellinis. We didn't go into that because originally the idea was to remain in Asia.
Don't you think the Silk Route must have both the design and the food and the labels?
I mean, it's the tortellini folding in Central Asia is, I think, a very typical clue. Yeah. So it must be something like that. Actually, we ended up thinking that the origin of Mantı is of Turkic Central Asian or Mongolian, and going to both ways, and sometimes ending up in totally different things. So it's pretty much the old map idea we had in our primary school, Turk spreading all over. It has to be adapted to Mantı. So